He is, God, he has got so much damn potential.
He definitely does.
He's got so much potential.
But he comes back from every fight that he's had better, you know? I mean, when one of the most impressive ones was he knocked out Klitschko. Oh my God.
Klitschko's seen better days.
Another inconsistency in Anthony Joshua. I now understand, I believe having watched this, where Jake Paul is getting his confidence from. How he's built this narrative in his head that he genuinely has a chance. I think the thing to remember here though, is that Anthony Joshua doesn't struggle against all.
This might be his last fight, getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out.
Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson analyzed the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua matchup, focusing on the contrasts between the two fighters. Tyson stresses that Joshua needs to control his shots carefully, as Jake is not at his level. Rogan describes Joshua as one of the most intimidating men in boxing, while highlighting the risks Paul faces against such a powerful and experienced opponent, especially given that Paul's prior bouts have mostly been exhibitions against retired or older fighters.
It's one of the craziest propositions of all time. You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're going to fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division. Maybe we should watch the Francis Ngannou fight so you could see. Let's watch that real quick, just so you can see what Anthony Joshua is capable if he's fighting someone that's not in his league. Okay, look, Usyk beat him, and he beat him twice, and Andy Ruiz caught him in the first fight and dropped him and stopped him. It was spectacular. Andy Ruiz is super fucking talented. Usyk is perhaps...
The Wade Concept host explains that for Jake Paul, being stopped by a single clean shot from Anthony Joshua is far safer than absorbing repeated hits across 8 rounds. The reasoning is straightforward. Continuous punishment can create risks that extend well beyond the fight itself. Even with Joshua wearing smaller 10-ounce gloves, a quick knockout, while dramatic, limits extended damage and gives Paul a clear endpoint to the contest, reducing the cumulative strain of repeated contact. The host points out that this perspective reshapes how the matchup is viewed, underscoring the danger Paul faces despite the exhibition-style format. For this bout, Joshua is required to use smaller 10-ounce gloves, a change designed to enhance the entertainment value, making the fight more appealing to viewers and media while still keeping the impact somewhat regulated. However, even with this adjustment, the Wade host stresses that the risk for Paul remains substantial. Joshua's power is well known, and the reduced padding can increase the chances of a decisive finish. The glove choice is a technical modification, but it does not alter the clear gap in strength, skill, and experience between the two fighters, ensuring that every exchange carries meaningful consequences.
Only one outcome that can hurt Jake in this scenario, and that's that he gets viciously knocked out. Or he gets beat up really bad for 8 rounds and then viciously knocked out. I saw Nikisa talking on Ariel Helwani's show today about this, about like how it's not necessarily something they're worried about that Jake gets knocked out, because he's not afraid of the one-punch knockout as much as he's afraid of like Jake getting beat up for 8 rounds badly and it, you know, causing some real cognitive damage. And there is science behind the fact that the more repeated head trauma is the more dangerous thing about pro boxing, because those gloves, you can get hit, you get 8 to 10 seconds to stand, and you can repeat it 2-3 times in the same fight, just absorbing punch after punch. So in the totality of Jake getting like knocked out cold, is that the worst thing possible for his health? I mean, who knows, dude? You could have a freaking brain aneurysm when you get hit off one shot from a guy like AJ. Again, knock on wood, you don't want to see any of that happen. If his career ends because AJ hurts him badly, then yes. But if it's a knockout where Jake is able to then continue fighting, people will still watch. It may not be as big as the AJ fight, but he still has an opportunity to make money in boxing. Again, the only way it wouldn't be the case is if Jake got like permanently injured from this fight, which is part of the reason that they take this fight, is because Jake doesn't really have anything to lose here, outside of, again, the bodily harm. You know, you fight a guy like Tommy Fury again, which I want to see, I think is more competitive, but doesn't bring the eyes that AJ does. So again, this is the entertainment business, and these Netflix fights are made for a massive audience. But you lose to Tommy Fury again, even by decision, that deflates Jake more than a knockout from Anthony Joshua. A loss to KSI deflates Jake more than a loss to Anthony Joshua. This is a perfect, even if Jake would have gotten just schooled by Gervonta Davis, it would have deflated him more than a knockout, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of risk, a lot of reward, but as far as your...
Nikisa Bidarian explains the reasoning behind selecting Anthony Joshua as Jake Paul's opponent. Since the fight is being produced for Netflix, the organizers needed a matchup that would deliver maximum visual and narrative impact. Several factors had to be evaluated, including fighter reputation, media appeal, and audience expectations. Joshua fit these requirements perfectly. As a globally recognized former world champion with massive international visibility, he makes the event highly marketable. His involvement raises the stakes and creates a storyline that is compelling for both viewers and promotional partners. The Netflix coverage amplifies every stage of preparation as well as the fight itself.
Baddest names possible. That included Terrence Crawford. That included Ryan Garcia. That included Tommy Fury. That included Anthony Joshua. And we probably had, 30 or 40 names that we kind of reviewed. And I will say at least 12 or 13 names that agreed to do the fight. Some within the 2-week period, actually. But from a Netflix perspective, they were very keen on Joshua. They were interested on Crawford. They were interested in Ryan Garcia as potential opponents for Jake Paul. They were interested in Tommy Fury at some level as well. And the one that Jake gravitated towards was Anthony Joshua. Once it became clear Ryan couldn't do the fight as well, Ryan was also something that he was interested in doing. And the deal came together mostly because Jake mentioned this as of March of this year, right? That's the first time he was on a podcast and said, I think I can beat Anthony Joshua. Everyone laughed. At the time, Eddie Hearn said this is another, media attention-seeking moment for Jake Paul. I made it clear then to Eddie and to the media, Jake was serious and we wanted to do it in 2026. We had further conversations with Matchroom in July of this year with the understanding that if Jake got through Tank Davis, and even though that was an exhibition, it was very much structured to be a real fight in every way, shape, and form, then we would look to make Jake versus Joshua in 2026. So that gave us a head start in terms of trying to come to an agreement with Matchroom and AJ, and we were able to get it done.
I just want to ask about a couple of those names that you mentioned. Garcia's interesting because a day or so later, Oscar De La Hoya said, he's a DAZN fighter, this ain't happening, and of course we know there's no...
Ryan Garcia speaks about the potentially life-changing impact a loss could have on Jake Paul. He explains that Joshua's power should never be underestimated and that a defeat could affect Paul not only physically in the moment, but also in terms of reputation and long-term career direction. The experience could be defining, underscoring the enormous challenge Paul is stepping into. Garcia stresses that Joshua's strength and skill make this matchup a serious test, and the consequences of failure are very real. Proper training, preparation, and awareness are essential for Paul as he faces the risks posed by Joshua's presence in the ring.
I think that this has been a misstep from Jake. I think he wanted to make his partners at Netflix a little too happy, and he's gonna walk into it. But look it, he loses to AJ. Where does he go from here? Who does he fight? You're gonna go back down to 135?
The problem is not that he loses to AJ. The problem is the way he's gonna lose to AJ might be life changing.
Right.
So that's the real issue.
It could be life changing in many ways, right? Physically.
Yeah.
See what he did in Ngannou. It's like. But then again,
Frank Martin points out that although the fight offers major financial benefits, it remains an extremely difficult challenge for Jake Paul. Money alone does not reduce the danger, and Paul should have carefully weighed the risks before agreeing to the bout. Martin emphasizes that this is not simply a payday, the stakes are real, and the physical test is serious. Paul is facing a seasoned, powerful opponent whose experience in high-level boxing cannot be matched by promotional hype or celebrity status. The financial reward is significant, but the physical and reputational risks are equally impossible to overlook.
I wouldn't consider him like a YouTube fighter no more. I feel like he put in the time, he gotten better throughout all his fights. He done got better throughout all those fights, But it's still when you fighting fighters who actually done it for their whole life, it's a little different. If that fight happened, it'll be a good money fight. It'll be a good money fight. But that's a tough task for, Jake going to get that big ass heavyweight AJ. I know AJ personally,
Johnny Nelson has remarked that this fight could signal the end of Jake Paul's active boxing career if he suffers a knockout. Paul has become a major revenue source for top fighters like Joshua, often providing large financial incentives to make big matchups happen. Nelson also points out that several conspiracy theories have surfaced, suggesting Paul may struggle to secure similar high-profile bouts after this one because of the potential physical impact and shifting public perception. The fight is a crucial moment for Paul, serving as both a financial opportunity and a personal risk that could reshape the direction of his career.
Stuck in between. Because nobody on this green earth would actually turn down 50, 60 million to fight Jake Paul. And people that don't like this will probably watch it because they want to see Jake Paul getting knocked out. So what's it say about AJ and what's it say about Jake Paul? I think I was thinking upside down. For AJ, I thought, Mama's cashing out. He's cashing out because he's going down this minute line. But I thought, in reality, is he? Realistically, he's thinking, you know what, this big mouth YouTuber stroke boxer has the cheek to call me out. I'd be pissed off at that, if I'm honest with you. I'd be upset if I was AJ, thinking, that's disrespect, man. You think you can deal with me? But he didn't. AJ was jovial and he commended Jake Paul's business acumen, saying, we've sat down, the deal's been done. But still, it just leaves an odd taste in your mouth. So as long as AJ gets the job done, and I mean gets the job done, shows his world-class pedigree, and wipes this boy out, then everybody's happy. But how does it enhance his career? The only way it enhances his career is financially. That's it. No other way. There's no props from beating Jake Paul, apart from saying, thank God you shut him up. For Jake Paul now, I got to give this boy props because he now has our attention and the whole world is talking about Jake Paul.
I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors, Bet Goodwin, for supporting that boxing show. Now, if you're interested in having a little flutter, or as I call it after my dad, Benji's Bets, Bet Goodwin's the place to be. Check out Bet Goodwin using the QR code on the screen.
I'm probably all right. I'm probably 90% thinking the fight's going to happen. But I'm struggling. I'm thinking, this boy can't be so stupid. But then you hear a whisper. You hear a whisper that Jake Paul himself might be cashing out. Because the big purses that he's pulling, fighting these has-beens or ex-fighters, they're dropping slowly but surely. So maybe, just maybe, this might be his last fight. Getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out. But there's always that conspiracy theory. Are there some contract agreements that can and cannot be done, which will never see the light of day that we don't know about? Well, if you're an ex-fighter and if you like the fight game, you'll see fake. You'll know fake when you see it. So if there's any of that fakery going on with this, pulling a shot, taking it easy, giving man a bit of a breather, especially coming from AJ, I'd be disappointed because AJ's...
Anthony Joshua has openly commented on Francis Ngannou's decision not to fight Jake Paul. Joshua called the choice unwise, stressing that fighters rarely receive such lucrative opportunities and turning them down may not be in their best interest. Shilsonen supports this view, stating that Ngannou should have accepted the matchup. He argued there was little to lose by taking the fight, and it would have provided a chance to earn significant money while gaining more exposure. Joshua's remarks highlighted the strategic thinking involved in accepting or rejecting bouts and the importance of recognizing rare opportunities in professional boxing.
Against Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua at the press conference gets asked his opinion of Francis not taking the fight against Jake Paul. And Joshua's like, he's an idiot. He's an idiot. There is no reason for him to not take this match. I cannot be and am not mad at Francis. I can't be. Like rules would preclude me from being upset with Francis. I'm not a big Francis fan. Francis fan. I'm not a Francis supporter. So I want to hurt Francis. I want to do something to hurt him. Well, his own actions took $10 million out of his bank account, of which, by the way, could use $10 million. So I can't be mad at him. If I teased him and by God, get in there and he go, oh my gosh, I heard Chael and I heard from all the Eagles and what was I thinking? And Joshua's out. This is my chance of redemption. Hey, put me in, Jake. That would then help him. That would be positive for Francis. That would create envy as well as jealousy from outside observers like me. But I will tell you, trying to break down and understand how we got to this conclusion is Mind-boggling. You ever met a writer? Your whole life, have you ever met a writer? Maybe went to college for it and they're a writer. Do you want to know the hardest thing in the world that person's going to have to do to make money? Find somebody.
Jake Paul has argued that Anthony Joshua struggles against smaller fighters, suggesting this could give him an edge in their bout. Analysts, including a commentator named Henry from a podcast, have reviewed Joshua's performances against shorter opponents and identified trends in how he handles them. Although Paul points to what he sees as a weakness, the analysis shows that Joshua's technical ability, punching power, and reach usually offset any size differences. The conversation highlights the wider debate over how physical mismatches can influence results. However, Joshua's experience and preparation still make him a major threat, regardless of Paul's claims.
Joshua definitely doesn't struggle, and that's against guys who are of a similar stature to him. When he won his first world title against Charles Martin, he was a taller heavyweight, not taller than AJ necessarily, but a heavyweight of taller stature, and he got that one with a very simple knockout. It was one of the easiest fights of Anthony Joshua's career. He had a war against Vladimir Klitschko, but again, he was highly competitive and eventually managed to get Klitschko out of there. In the Kubrat-Pulev fight, while it was a mixed performance, he did end up producing one of his best knockouts. Similarly against Robert Helenius, whilst AJ probably didn't put in one of his best performances again, it ended in another dramatic knockout. He was punch perfect against Otto Wallin, in my opinion, and he had that absolutely devastating knockout win against Francis Ngannou, who, of course, an absolutely enormous man with a fantastic chin, or so it seemed until Anthony Joshua got his hands on him. Even earlier on in his career against the likes of White, Brazil, and Molina, these were all taller heavyweights who AJ dealt with consummate ease. Of course, most recently he had that loss against Daniel Dubois. So the reason I mention all of these is to say that AJ doesn't struggle against every shorter man. Therefore, if Jake does okay in some capacity, as I say, loses on points or manages to go several rounds of Anthony Joshua, then you have to say that Jake Paul's quite a bit better than we thought. And Anthony Joshua, yeah, he's slipped since then a bit. I mean, AJ physically was better back then, but he's way more experienced now, so he's maybe around the same overall. It probably all evens out. But the point is, you'd have to give Jake Paul some credit in that situation and really worry about where Anthony Joshua is at this point. Overall, whilst some of the things that Jake Paul's saying might be true, it still doesn't mean that he has any hope in hell of winning this fight. I still fully expect Anthony Joshua to deal with him within a couple of rounds. Now look, to most people it'll be a loss to Anthony Joshua if he doesn't even finish him in round one. But the reality is, I understand in boxing that someone can move and can survive for periods of time. It might be that Jake Paul runs.
The bout has drawn major attention because it showcases one of the most significant mismatches in recent boxing memory. Even though Paul may have youth and energy on his side, these factors cannot close the gap in professional skill, tactical awareness, and ring IQ. Experts point out that while the fight will be entertaining for fans, it clearly leans in Joshua's favor in terms of preparation, power, and technique. Jake Paul has built his career through a mix of social media fame, boxing exhibitions, and selective high-profile matchups. This showdown with Joshua marks another step in that journey, offering both big financial gains and massive exposure. Analysts highlight that opportunities of this scale are rare. And although Paul brings hype and personality to the event, he faces a far more skilled and vastly experienced opponent. The matchup ultimately tests Paul's readiness for real professional challenges, underscoring the gap between promotional success and true technical boxing ability.
Think, why the fuck would he do this? And the only rational idea I can think of for why he's taking this fight is the fact that, from what I could find, it seems he's getting paid around $92 million by Netflix for this fight. And I'm sure all of you that are watching have all had that conversation with your friends where you ask dumb shit like, how many millions to box Anthony Joshua? I mean, yeah, I'd gladly take brain damage for 92 million. I'd do it for like 20K. And I don't think Netflix are going to be happy with replacing Gervonta Davis with a Nate Diaz rematch, as much as Nate Diaz may love that.
Who do you want to fight next?
Maggots. Who do I want to fight next? I want to beat the fuck out of Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, either one.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, you may think Nate Diaz is being delusional here, but I mean, I take brain damage twice in one night for that kind of money. And it's crazy.